least of my issues.
Yeah. That's fine. They're pretty. No problem. Not this whole thing, but maybe afterwards, can we do? Thank you. Is everyone all set? Anyone not set? Okay. Thank you all for joining today. So as you know, yesterday we swore in our new police chief, Chief Jacobson. Thanks again, Chief Jacobson, for stepping up, and thanks to Chief Administrative Officer Regina Rush-Kittle for filling in for that month and a half. It was not an easy task. We're grateful to you. Today we're announcing some new reforms and initiatives in response to what happened to Randy Cox. And I'm going to go over a lot of the details of this, and Chief Jacobson can help fill in the blanks if I miss anything here. There's a good amount of content here, so bear with me. So we're going to be announcing new policies and standard operating procedures on prisoner transportation and detention facility operations. We're going to be we're announcing today new policies and standard operating procedures on individuals in need of medical attention. Some people have been referencing this as medical Miranda. I'm also going to go over new department-wide trainings on active bystandership, ABLE training, and de-escalation, ICAT training. I've talked a little bit about this in the past. Also a review of detention center policies and procedures. A member of the police department command staff has been assigned to begin this process of the review, and this review will include random body camera audits as well. And we're announcing a series of public town hall listening sessions. We're announcing a series of public town hall listening sessions for community members to meet the new chief and for us to collect input from the community. These community listening sessions are set to begin next week. The first one is going to be on Thursday, July 14th from 6 to 8 p.m. at Hill Regional Career High School, 140 Legion Ave. The new initiatives stem from the initial review of the June 19th in-custody incident and injury involving Mr. Richard Randy Cox, as well as other newly planned initiatives by Chief Jacobson in partnership with CAO Rush-Kittle and myself. I want to reiterate that what happened to Mr. Cox was unacceptable, and we're committed to making these necessary changes. We're deeply committed to making these necessary changes for the City of New Haven, for the family, and for the integrity of the police department. We approach public safety to ensure that our department is operating in a manner that it serves the best interests of our residents, supports our officers, and is consistent with our shared values of dignity, respect, and compassion for all New Haveners. We promise quick and decisive action and accountability, and today's initiatives and reforms are an important step in fulfilling that commitment. And I also look forward to the upcoming town halls to continue this conversation. I want to get into a couple of specifics here. So the new policies and standard operating procedures on prisoner transportation and detention facility operations. This is codified in Special Order 22-03, and it went into effect on July 3rd. The measures complement the New Haven Police Department General Order 5.02 and are designated to help ensure the safety of prisoners, officers, and the public when a person is taken into custody and transported. These updates include requiring the primary means of transporting prisoners to be in a marked police cruiser. The second is requiring prisoner conveyance vans to only be used for transportation to court, or when a prisoner's size or other physical conditions preclude the use of a marked patrol vehicle, or for a special event that may result in multiple arrests. The latter two instances also require authorized approval from a supervising officer. And third, on this standard operating procedure, requiring all prisoners to be secured in any transport vehicle by proper use of a seatbelt and specific documentation and approval requirements in the event that a prisoner is combative, or officer safety considerations may make doing so impractical. Fourth, requiring any officer operating a transport vehicle to do so in a manner that is calculated to maintain the safety and security of the prisoner and at a speed not to exceed the posted speed limit. And fifth, prohibiting officers from the use of cellular telephones without a hands-free device while engaging in the transport of a prisoner. Medical Miranda, the so-called medical Miranda, or policies and standard operating procedures on individuals in need of medical attention. This is also codified in Special Order 22-3 and will complement the New Haven Police Department General Order 5.02. The requirements of this new language are that officers are required to make an initial inquiry prior to transport and upon arrival at the detention facility during the intake process to determine whether a prisoner is injured and or needs medical assistance. If a prisoner is injured, complains of injury, appears to be in an unstable medical condition or mental health status, appears to be in need of medical attention or requests medical attention prior to transport, the officers must immediately contact their supervisor and request that an EMS be dispatched to their current location. It also requires the monitoring and physical well-being of prisoners during transport and requires specific procedures to be followed by officers if during the transport a prisoner is injured, complains of injury, appears to be in an unstable medical or mental health status, appears to be in need of medical attention or requests medical attention, or if the transporting vehicle is involved in a collision. This special order will require department-wide training, which will begin today. All of the officers will be trained within the next month. And it will also require a knowledge test of the content. The special order will be submitted for permanent adoption by the Police Commission as a general order in the near future. We reviewed the proposed state legislation on what's been referred to as medical Miranda. And that this language mirrors the state legislation language. The state legislation did not pass through both houses at the state, but we wanted to be proactive here and use that as a model for our practices in New Haven. The training that we will be implementing is two different nationally recognized training, ABLE and ICOT. ABLE is active bystandership for law enforcement training. This is an 8-hour training. Some of our officers have been trained to implement this training, to train our officers, and they will be completing a department-wide training over the next 6 months. Similarly, ICAT, integrating communications, assessment, and tactics training. Some of our officers are already trained to train this training, and the entire department will be required to complete this training over the next 6 months as well. The ABLE training is, as I said, active bystander training, so it is duty to intervene, giving the officers the tools to intervene when they may see a procedure that's not properly followed, or an officer that may require another officer to intervene and encourage that officer to do something differently. And then ICAT training is de-escalation training that gives officers more tools to be able to de-escalate a situation and reduce the likelihood of them using force. I would make a note that this police class that graduated last night, 20 new officers, is the first class that's received ICAT training as a part of their initial training in the academy. And this announcement today underscores that the rest of the department will be receiving this training over the next 6 months. I think that's all I have. Let me just double check here. Yeah, I think that's all I have at the moment. Chief Jacobson, do you have anything to add here?
No, just a couple of things. Good morning. Day 2. Thank you, Mayor, again, for your confidence in me, and thank you, CAO, for bringing us through this couple-month period. I miss my partner already. Yeah, we're committed to making sure this never happens again. We're committed and we're passionate about it. The mayor and I saw Mr. Cox yesterday, and it was a very tough thing to see. But I think it's important for us to see it because it's our job to fix it and make sure it never happens again. And I'm never gonna forget meeting him and him attempting to talk. And it was a very emotional thing. And as the chief, I want my officers to know, yes, you can make mistakes, but you can't treat people inhumanely. And I talk about it all the time, procedural justice, moving forward, treating people with dignity. So this is the first launch of changing things and making changes. We will eventually make general orders and move forward. I think that's all I have for right now. Any questions?
Chief, where did you see Mr. Cox yesterday? What was his condition based on your observation?
He was in the hospital, obviously still in the hospital. He's, he has a hard time talking. There's paralysis. I'm not a doctor, so I don't get into it, but he's still struggling.
And have you and the mayor and others been in touch with the family of Mr. Cox, and what are you hearing from the family?
Yes, the mayor was in touch with the mother, and that's how we set up the visit.
I mean, I can add to
Oh,
that.
sure, go ahead.
So I think yesterday seeing Mr. Cox in his condition really brings home why it's so important for us to take action to correct what happened. I'm a dad. I can't imagine my children one day being able to walk and the next day potentially never being able to walk again. The first thing he said to me is he struggled to say, "I can't talk." The family said that that Daddy was even a progress, that he was able to talk because he hasn't really been able to talk, and you can kind of hear him saying that. Both the chief and I kind of touched his left hand, and it moved a little bit. But it's just awful what happened to him. It's just awful. And my heart goes out to him and the family. His life is forever changed. The family has been very open to communicating. We sat in the waiting room for a while with his sister. I admire the family for how they're managing through this terrible situation. I don't blame the family for being angry. And we have, the chief and I have repeatedly offered to the family that anything we can do to help support them in this time, we will do so.
Can I ask a clarifying question about the transport van?
Sure.
So just reading this over quickly, so now going forward, that you're going to, any person who's being taken into custody after arrest is going to be placed in a marked police cruiser unless the size or physical condition makes that unable to be possible. Is that correct?
Yes, so we're not gonna, the transport vans aren't gonna be out around the city picking up suspects like they were in the past.
And how often were they used? You know, how many times did you maybe use the transport van versus a marked police cruiser?
Well, that's something that we're weighing now too. So the transport van could pick up somebody in one side of the city and on the way back, pick up other people that were arrested. We arrest less people. When the transport vans were put into fruition years and years ago, there were more arrests. So there was more of a need for it. There's a definitely need for it on bringing people to court. We have to do that. It would just take too many resources to bring all the cars off the street. So we still want to do that. And say, a mass arrest situation, which might be, multiple warrants or something in the same location. But contrary to that, we're going to run with this SOP and see how, with our resources, we can do this. Because if you watch the video, officers are waiting for that van maybe 15 minutes, 12 minutes. They could have run Mr. Cox into the police department and gotten him in safely because that car is a little more safe than the vans. So we're going to test all this out For now, the only time the vans will be used for court situations and the other ones put into the SOP.
I'm sorry, just one quick follow-up. Then why didn't it, was it kind of standard operating procedure for them to get put into the transport vans and then go to the detention center, you know, in theory, why?
Yeah, the theory behind it was that now the officer doesn't have to drive in from wherever he is in the city. The one van picks everybody up, so the officer's able to do paperwork and get back out and do more work. And, you know, especially with our staffing levels, that's important, but we really looked at it, and it's way more of it's safer to do it this way, and if that's what turns out and we can do it, we're gonna continue to do it that way.
Chief, can you talk about the seatbelts in the vans? Initially, it was one van that had seatbelts, then as of, I think, last week, there were 2 vans. Have all 3 been outfitted?
No, just the 2. The third one, they had ordered a kit for it. It's taken some time to get in.
Do you have any idea when that might be?
I don't want to give a timeline. I would say within a month, but now that we're not, what's that?
We're not using it.
Yeah, we're not using it, yeah.
No, I understand that.
That one's put down. That is an older van too, so if we're, you know, if we're just using them for court and the other instances listed in here,
Right.
you know, we may not, you know, we're gonna put seatbelts in it if we do use it, but we may not need to use it.
Roger.
Chief, according to this special order, if a driver who's transporting the prisoner finds out that that prisoner is injured, what specifically are they supposed to do en route? I'm obviously not reading the order yet, but could you talk through, according to this special order, you just have to ask.
I'm gonna read it for you, just so I'm
Yeah,
not, you know.
specifically this order.
If during a transport a prisoner is injured, complains of injury, appears to be in need of medical attention, appears to be in unstable medical or mental health status, appears to be in need of medical attention or requests medical attention, or if the transporting vehicle is involved in a collision, the officer shall pull to the side of the road as soon as practical, immediately notify dispatch to request a cover officer and to request that emergency medical service be dispatched to the current location, immediately notify their supervisor when it's safe to do so, immediately render aid consistent with their training and experience, and remain on scene to await arrival of EMS and the supervisor.
And could, well, I don't think you have anything you want to add to that.
Yeah, it sounds like you have a follow-up question on this, but I think, so some of this is reiterating very, very explicitly what was existing policy. Some of this is additional, and I think the additional portion, and it's also clarifying existing policy. But the additional thing that's very important here is the officers are now required to ask both at the time of the arrest and upon arrival at the detention facility if people need medical assistance. That is something that was not policy beforehand and now is policy now.
My question was how this differs from what's currently on the books. It sounds like some of it's clarifying,
Yeah.
some of it's building off.
Yeah.
But what is it that needed to be clarified? If the previous order said something similar, maybe in less detail.
Well, the previous order left some interpretation. This is saying you shall do these things to make sure that emergency medical attention is brought to the location where they realized or notified that the person is injured.
And in Mr. Cox's case, he clearly said at multiple points that he needed medical attention and he's going to the hospital and was hurt. Just the officers at detention in particular appeared not to believe him. Is there anything in this order that
Yeah, so
how
the-
do you establish that a person is credible when they say that they're hurt and need for example?
What this order is saying is if they say it, you will do it. Not that, hey, you know, it's open to interpretation. If this is mentioned, you're required to ask these questions on body cam, right? So if you don't ask these questions on body cam, you could be subject to discipline, you know, which is a different thing than we had in the past. Then, if they say any answer affirmatively to any of those questions, they will receive medical treatment.
Can I add to that? So there's a number of things that are intended to address that type of situation. First of all, because the officers are required to ask, it provides an opportunity for the officers to take a moment to actually proactively think about it. The second thing is ABLE training. There were 5 officers involved here. And the ABLE training gives officers the tools to talk to one another and say, did you ask? He said something, should we check? Hold on, are we doing the right thing here? It gives, and the fact that this training will be done department-wide also is intended to foster more of a culture of intervention by the officers as something that is welcomed and supported. And the third thing is, by doing a review of the detention facility, including random body camera checks, when there isn't an incident that we're responding to, but rather reviewing regularly the intake by looking at the body camera of officers, will allow us to proactively identify if there is additional training that needs to happen, to support officers if they, in another scenario where there isn't such a medical disaster that occurred, to say, this is how you should have done things better, to potentially even discipline an officer if there's a history of the officer not asking these questions or not treating individuals that are in detention with the kind of respect and following those procedures.
Chief, in the squad cars, are there seat belts in the back seat?
Yes, sir.
And they are required to be used in their
Yes.
case? Just clarification.
Thank you.
Are there specific policies and procedures at the detention facility that are under review? Or are you just looking at body camera footage and saying, hey, that one's all?
No, we've assigned a lieutenant down there as an officer in charge, and he's going to look at everything we're doing to make sure that everything is safe. And as we redo the general order, putting in the special order, because there's two here, there's two things we're touching on here. We're touching on the prisoner conveyance van general order and the detention general order. Those two will be reworked.
Mr. Mayor, did you say that all officers will be trained within a month and then tested? Can you just clarify?
So there's three things.
Okay.
One is the new standard operating procedures that were approved and signed by Acting Chief Rush Kittle on July 3rd. Those are specifically about prisoner transport, requiring the wearing of seatbelt, and the medical Miranda questions. That will be completed within a month. The second the second and the third training are ABLE and ICAT, the duty to intervene and the de-escalation training. That we anticipate being able to go through the entire force in 6 months. Again, it's 8 hours of training, and you can't train a huge group. You have to train smaller groups, and given all the pressures on the police department, we have lower numbers right now, and they're out on the street a lot, and we want them out on the street a lot. It's going to take us a little time to train the entire department.
Do the requirements of the special order take effect right away, or do you have to wait until training is done in a month?
So it was signed on 7/3, but the people have to be trained, the training requirement of the special order. So as soon as someone's trained, they're required to adhere to the special order. But we've already taken the vans off the street and everything else. So I would say we're already mostly doing this, but as soon as they're trained, they're required by our policies and procedures to do it.
So this is not being followed by every officer today, because not every officer's been trained, not
Well, it is in the way of, we're seatbelting everybody in, they're being transported in cars. A lot of it's already being adhered to. This is just putting it into an order.
And who's the lieutenant who's been put in charge of the detention?
Sean Marr.
Do you foresee any additional policies being put in place? I know they're trying to fix this, and we're going to start with this, and
Yeah, this is just so it doesn't go through the police commissioners and the usual change. This is a quick special order. It will become into the general order. So we're going to go through everything in both general orders and pretty much add this as well as other best practices and other things we find out that may be wrong through the review of body camera, whatever. So we're open to changing. We have to change both of those general orders going forward, but that's a longer process.
With regard to the seat belting of arrestees, is there a special training in how you are to seat belt someone who was arrested so that you protect yourself as well?
Exactly, and it's that they're going to be required to do a practical where they go downstairs and seatbelt people in. There's weapon retention, my weapon retention. I'm not belting someone in where I'm showing my weapons, things like that. So there's a process that the training academy put together and will be training. All right. Thank you.